Because we, our first order of business is to review the agenda. And Mr. Allen, if you would do so with particular attention to points where we will need to take action, so people are aware for public comment. And I'm going to just say right now, I think we should table. I did not have a chance to read the minutes when they came in. I don't know if anybody else did.
Briefly, but
Okay.
I'm okay with tabling.
Are we all okay with tabling that till the next meeting? There's another meeting this month. Okay. So
Right.
other than that, please, Mr. Allen.
So appears we'll have some public comment, and that'll be followed by a report on where we are in terms of preparations. We'll have a couple of polling place changes, one of them which we had mentioned earlier, and one of which is more recently settled. One in Chester, or two precincts in Chester City, and one in Chester Township that has bipartisan support. And then there's a petition that was filed with us to ask us to relocate two precincts in Darby Borough. And on all the polling place changes, our supervisor of our warehouse will be reporting on that. Next, we'll be discussing potential satellites. That'll be an action item for voter service centers. And then the next meeting, it says on the agenda, if needed, we will need the meeting on October 22nd.
And Mr. Allen, I have the impression, I could be wrong, that many people are here to talk about potential satellites. Would you just briefly state what the action that you might be requesting is so that they can make public comments specifically on that if they choose to?
Sure. The action item is that we will be asking the board to authorize the opening of 3 satellite voter service centers in addition to the one that we offer here at the Government Center in Media. Through the summer months, we were concerned about whether or not we would have enough staff, and secondly, whether the technology from the Department of State could be tested and functional. The last thing you want to do is invite people to a voter service center and possibly have the laptops and printers that print out the labels that go on the envelopes, not function well. So we also gathered feedback from other counties that already have had for weeks now voter service centers, and that knowledge helped us move to a different printing mechanism. There are the Dymo printers that the Department of State supplied. There are also Lexmark printers that the Department of State supplies and that we've used for many years. We found that the Dymos, through others' experience, work somewhat well, but it require a cumbersome workaround process of developing and using a template for printing the label. So we tested with the Lexmark printers and determined that those would work. We also have recruited and trained people over the last few weeks working on real-time applications for mail and absentee ballots at the Union Power Plant. And we feel that between full-time staff and the temps, we can make sure that we have adequate coverage at each one of the 3 sites. The 3 sites that I'm recommending that we use are the Upper Darby Township Administration Building at 100 Garrett Road in Upper Darby, the Chester City Hall. So that's Upper Darby would cover the easternmost part of the county, Chester City Hall in the south at 1 East 4th Street in Chester. And lastly, Chester Heights, which would serve the northwest and north parts of the county, including a large senior population in that area who have applied for mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. We are not looking to have these voter service centers operate on Election Day, partly because these locations are polling places on Election Day. We are also not looking to have quite as extensive hours as they have in, for example, Montgomery County, because we want to make sure that we're not stretching our staff too thin. So we're looking at operating only on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to noon, and then weekdays, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. So with that, I hope that helps with any public comments that are there. The voter service centers, just so you know, are for voters to do one of two things most commonly, and that is to apply over the counter in person to receive a mail or absentee ballot and the return envelopes, the secrecy envelope, as well as the return envelope that you place the secrecy. Hopefully you have the ballot in the secrecy envelope and place that after you've sealed it inside the return envelope, and then seal that, sign it, and date it. So the people are applying in person. For example, they've been doing it here at the government center since October 1. And other uses of the voter service center are for individuals who have made a mistake and who need a replacement item or need assistance or direction on correcting their mistake. So sometimes people seal the envelope only to realize that they've placed the naked ballot in the outer envelope instead of using the secrecy envelope. They look down at the materials at their home and realize, oh, I didn't use the secrecy envelope. So we assist that voter with making that right. So with that,
And I'm sorry, you may have said it, but you said the hours, but did you say the dates that it would be open?
we would be opening on the 21st of October and wrapping up on the 4th of November, the Monday before Election Day. The Voter Service Center and Media would remain open on Election Day.
Thank you. Okay. And Mr. Rush, I assume the purpose of the list was that we would call out who's going to speak, or Mr. Allen will? Okay.
Yeah, this is we've never had this before. This is a council sign-in sheet.
Wow.
But people,
I'm not going to say I'm sorry we need it. We love public comment, but.
so I'm gonna
But I-
call out 3 names, and if you could approach the podium.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, for public comment, we do have a clock so that all of us can go home to dinner. We do require you to say your name, and then basically your precinct would be sufficient if you know it. If you don't, your general mailing address where you live would be sufficient, I believe, Mr. Parks. So just enough so that we can identify you. With that, I guess it's going to be a little 3-person line. Right? Is that what you're envisioning?
Yes, so Esther Lights, Peggy, I apologize if I'm misreading this, Wilson? I'm sorry?
Yeah, Peggy Wilson. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And Heather Boyd?
All right. So you are the first 3. I see Peggy and I see Heather, but number 1, I haven't seen.
I think we got Esther in the back there.
Oh, there's Esther. Okay. Esther, you're first.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Esther Lights of Darby Borough, 22 and 21. We want our polling place changed from the high school, junior high school to the rec center. It's more feasible for our handicapped people, which we have a lot of disabilities in Darby for the senior citizens. And they were having a hard time getting up into the school so that they could vote. A year and a half ago, we had one senior citizen that had fell over the rail, busted his head, and we had to call the ambulance. There are a lot of them that cannot get their wheelchairs up those steps. They're trying to say it's wheelchair accessible. It is not. There are 3 steps they have to go up to. It's a platform. And then the next step up to get into the building, it's a little higher. How can you do a wheelchair or a walker and you're a senior citizen? You can't do it. And we have an awful lot of senior citizens in Darby Borough that want to vote. I have been working with the senior citizens. I was on council for 8 years. I'm on civil service. I'm not on council anymore, but I'm still working with the senior citizens in Darby. Don't look at me like I'm not a senior citizen. I am. Don't worry, I am.
I wasn't sure.
But it's a lot of people that need help, and they still call my number, and I do whatever I can do for them. And right now they want to go back to the rec because it's a flat way of going in. You know, they don't have stairs to go up or anything. And where the polling place is, it was a gym. But you know how these big gyms at the junior highs and senior highs are so long. We have a lot of people that have breathing problems. They're on dialysis and it's a lot of anomalies that they have. And we just want it back at the rec and it's closer for them to get to and they're more used to it. So that's why I put the petition in. Monday, I brought a paper in with a list of people that were senior citizen that has disabilities and they want it back. I also have paperwork from some that I didn't get to get their names. So what do you want me to do with the paperwork that they had, each person had written their own?
Oh, you're welcome to hand up the paperwork to Mr. Allen if you have some that you'd like us to consider
Give it to this
with
gentleman?
Mr. Allen.
Okay.
And so I do see that the item for the petition is later in the agenda, and there is going to be a lot of public comment. And I do think that I'm aware of your petition, and I'm not sure that the voter service warehouse sees it all the same way. I mean, I personally am anxious about changing a polling location less than 30 days before such an important election that could lead to disenfranchisement. So I don't know if you are able to stay through, but
Yes.
okay, because if you aren't, I will figure out a way to move up. So if you do need to leave, we can move up that item so that she can be part of hearing the dialogue around that, because I think it's not going to be a while till we get to it. So I'm glad you can stay.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
And I appreciate you coming, your service to the community, and thank you for coming to
Thank you
express your
very
views.
much for your time.
All right.
Hi.
Good morning.
Marguerite Wilson, Upper Darby 3-9. I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters, but I'm not necessarily speaking for the league, but so I'm speaking in support of the expansion of the voter service centers. Act 77 expanded the ability to mail in your ballot and provide the opportunity to voters to go to their election service center and vote in person before Election Day. Once upon a time, and I remember this clearly, voters who worked had to get there at 7 a.m, stand in a long line, especially for an election like this, in the rain, and then on the other end of the day, get there after work and stand in a long line after you've just worked a full day in the rain. And it always rained on an election like this. Now, we've been doing a lot of voter outreach and education, and we know from our experience that a lot of people want that experience of voting in person on Election Day. But now it's an option, it's not a requirement. So, and then some voters don't trust the mail. Some just procrastinate until it's too late to mail their ballots. But expanding voter service centers would give voters the option of voting in person at their convenience without schlepping to media and dealing with this atrocious parking situation. It would also give voters access to in-person information and services, like our member, who shall remain nameless, who filled in the wrong block and wanted to know if she could just wait it out. And then, of course, had to come to media to get a new ballot, because of course you can't. So this is a great idea, but for it to be responsive to voter needs, they need to be accessible in terms of location and times. The center in Upper Darby, like at the One Center, could support not just people in our community, but commuters coming through 69th Street Terminal on their way to or from work. However, it has to have reasonable hours. It can't shut down at 4 o'clock. And parking should be free. Happens all the time when the machine isn't working, so we might as well take advantage of it. So 100%, let's give voters more and convenient access to voting and to any supporting services that you can give them from these centers.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm State Representative Heather Boyd. I live in Drexel Hill at 315 Upland Way, and I'm here speaking on behalf of to ask you to approve the Voter Services Center in the Upper Darby. I do represent the people who live in half of Upper Darby, Collingdale, Clifton Heights, Alden, and Darby Township. And these are folks who can't always get here. And I came here today and left my house by 8:30 and arrived here late and then drove around to park and had to walk a significant distance to get into this building. And it just reminded me how challenging that can be for folks, and especially for folks who don't have even the opportunity to drive here. During the pandemic, there was a voter services center in Upper Darby, and people liked it, they miss it, and they ask me for it every day. So every day someone comes into my district office in Clifton Heights, almost to a day, and says, how can I vote? How can I access my vote? How can I, get the information to vote? And to ask a person who doesn't have a car or doesn't have access to transportation or disability to come to this building from my community is quite an extensive request. So I would love to see an expanded voter services in my district. Or in my area. We are an incredibly populated part of the state or a part of the county. And so a lot of people can get to that area very easily. And I would love to see that expansion. I would love to see that expansion permanently. So if you can make that, I know the resources of voting is exceptionally challenging, but I appreciate your consideration. I hope that as someone who represents 65,000 people in the area that would be able to access this center, that you would seriously consider it, and I would be supportive of that. And if you could make it permanent, I would gladly appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have not had our time to comment as a group. Thank you, Representative. And I have not obviously talked to either of my colleagues because we do so in the public forum. That's appropriate under the Sunshine Act. I just want to say to the representative and others, I was part of voting for those earlier voter service centers. And I think I've made it clear my position over and over again that I'm for providing as much access to voting that we can in this community. And we have to do it safely and fairly and consistent with the laws. I think you've heard some of what Mr. Allen, he spent a long time talking about a printer. I mean, the logistics behind these centers and the security and the safety and making sure that they run right is very, very serious. And so we did ask him to explore, and he's done so diligently. And it's taken, I think, a long time to work through a proposal. I have to tell you, I wasn't sure he would come forward with a proposal that he thought could work in this election with all the security, concerns that we have and the staff concerns, because our staff is stretched. It's a really big election. So it's exciting to me to be here as part of an opportunity to do that, to have voter service centers in our community. I agree with you, Representative Boyd, that I would like to see them regularly. We also want to do them thoughtfully. Some of the other counties, I'm not saying they didn't do it thoughtfully, but if you look at when you do them and how you do them, there wouldn't be a lot of activity at one right now. We know that from data from other communities that Mr. Allen has asked. And so it wouldn't be efficient for our staff who have so many other obligations to run this election to stretch us like that at that time. So that's why I expect when we have a more full dialogue, and I know I'm taking a little bit of initiative here, so I will respect my board members if they feel compelled to speak now or later, but just let you know that the times, the how we're operating, where we're operating them. I know Mr. Allen has put a tremendous amount of thought into the recommendation to balance it for the whole community, to balance it for the staff so that they can run it securely. And I certainly intend to support it when it comes. So I just want to say that in case everybody is not sure. I don't know that my colleagues will agree, but I wanted to say that because I expect some comments will be for, some comments will be against. And I just want you to know that either way, a lot of thought has been put into it and a lot of time. And frankly, for Mr. Allen, I'm going to say, you might not want me to characterize it, skepticism as to whether he could create this opportunity for our community because of all those concerns. So with that, I will continue unless you feel compelled to speak now. I think I'm okay. I'm not asking you to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've spoken out in favor of these many times over the past several meetings. So, I think it's not a mystery. I think we've had discussions about this, and I'm like to hear what the public has to say.
I'll reserve my comments.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Allen.
Ann Mosikowski, Janice Davis, Roberto Winters. And after that, Thomas Davis, Kristen Seymour, and Andrea Knox.
Guess we should do it as a baseball game with the on deck circle.
I want to talk baseball right now.
No, I don't know. We shouldn't. We should not talk about baseball, please.
It's been only 36 hours.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ann Wozakowski. I'm currently president of the League of Women Voters of Central Delaware County. We don't have an office, so we have a post office box in Wallingford. I happen to live in Concord Township, but we're all over the county. We have many of our members are here today, but I just want to say, number one, thank you for the work of the Election Bureau, the staff. I had the opportunity of going in there a couple of weeks ago to drop off some voter registration. People were extremely welcoming and kind. I thank this board for considering opening these satellite voting offices. It's important. You need to know that this message came out to the leagues through the state league. Messages got back to the state league. And because again, there's 30 some leagues throughout Pennsylvania. So in some of the other counties, there are these satellite offices, and it's really important. Also, our league, as of the end of this month, we will have done 49 voter service, either presentations or tabling events or whatever. So voting is very important to the League of Women Voters. So we really appreciate that you're considering this. And I agree, it would be good if it could be something to be considered in the future as more permanent. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your nonpartisan work to get out the vote. It's amazing. You do great work.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Janice Davis, 48 North 10th Street in Darby Borough. My ward is 22. I've been on council probably over 30 years. I can tell you that. We had no problem. I don't even understand how our polling place was moved in the first place. We have no problem at the Darby Recreation Center. It's flat ground. We have two separate rooms that we can put our polling place in. And it was just, and it's not personal because people take this personal about this polling place, and it's not. It's personal to me because I care about our seniors and about our handicapped people. And that's what I'm concerned about. And that's it. That people tell them, well, just do a mail-in, if you can't do it. But a lot of our seniors want to walk in and vote. They want to do their duty and walk in and vote. And I want them to, because I don't do mail-ins. I'd rather just walk in and vote. And it's just not accessible for our people. It's nothing against the school or nothing. It's just that it was just so much better, just flat ground. We have parking, we have handicap spots right in front of the place. It's flat ground, and we can't wait for another term. And I understand this election is very important, but we need to do it for this election, or I'm afraid that people won't show up. Because they go over there, we had to help people into the building, not me, because they had to help me in there. And then once you get in there, you got to walk all the way across the woman. We had a lady coming from dialysis, and she had to walk. Once we got her up the steps, then she had to walk like all the way across the floor to get to her polling, because for some reason, 2-1 was first and then 2-2 was second. So there was no signs out there. I mean, people were telling me that the school is handicapped. There was no signs out there for a direction of where you go to get to the handicap part. No signs whatsoever. So I'm asking and I'm begging that we change this polling place back. And I thank you very much.
Are you able to stay too for a period of time? If you have to leave, let me know. This is going to be a really important issue.
Yes, if they don't put a ticket on our car.
Oh, okay. Well, if you do, if any of you who are here for that issue, if you have to leave, we can move it up, because I think we do need to talk to Ms. Dunn about the issues you've raised, and we'll have a response. So if you can stay, I'd like to continue with public comment for a period of time. But if you have an issue, I'll make sure everybody who wants to speak to it can talk, and then we'll have a dialogue about that one ahead of the agenda.
Oh, we can't do anything about Media Borough's parking enforcement, unfortunately.
I have to tell you, I got a spot right out front. I was driving and there's a truck and I guess no one wanted to be near the truck. So I did a possibly, I don't know if it's illegal, UE, and I just slipped right in and I never happened to me
Careful now,
before. I know normally I have to park, I do have to park a little bit away. All right, please.
Roberta Winters. I'm president of the League of Delaware County Interleague Organization, which consists of both the Central Delaware County League and the Radnor Township Delaware County League. So bottom line is I would like to echo all of Ann Mazakowski's comments. As a person who also is in the 7-2 precinct and ward in Radnor Township, I'm pleased that the careful consideration you've given to the location of the satellite offices, because I in Radnor would much rather drive to Upper Darby than to Media. And it really makes a difference. And as someone who, like Ann mentioned, has lots of tabling events, I often feel that I'm the victim of stump the chump. And it would really be nice if someone, I could just say, go here. You can have someone who will actually speak to you in person, not on the phone. You don't have to go on the internet. These are people who can actually give you the real answer face to face, have the materials to help you, and then you will feel comfortable that your vote has been cast and counted. We've actually had a member who ended up in court suit because she had changed the date incorrectly on her, she didn't know what to do. So this actually happens and we need that kind of support from real people in real places. Thank you.
I haven't heard that expression in so long. I love it. Stump the chump. All right, please. And wait, Jim, do you want, as we're on 3, do you want to call out the next 3?
Well, we had Thomas Davis, Kristen Seymour, Andrea Knox, and Laura Shaw and Richard Shaw.
Okay. Thank you, please. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Kristen Seymour. I live in Swarthmore, and I would like to thank the Board of Elections for taking up the important topic of adding satellite voting centers around the county. And I know you're just looking at 2 specific locations. And I know the logistics, 3, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. And I know the logistics are hard, and I certainly understand that. I would encourage you, as Representative Boyd said, to try to expand those hours because we all know that folks work different shifts, night shifts, evening shifts, and sometimes it's hard to get there during the day because you're working during the day and we have kids and life is crazy for everyone. So the easier that we can make voting, the better it is for our democracy. And I will keep this quick. I just want to also reiterate what Representative Boyd said, and that, last night when I was looking this up, if you don't have access to a car, it can take up to 2 hours to get to Media from some of these locations. And if you have children, I have an 8-year-old, and the idea of lugging my daughter on a bus and bringing her here to vote, that's a lot. That is a lot. So if we can expand this access, it would be fantastic. And it is just the fundamental right of being a democracy is expanding access to voting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Davis, and I am the Vice Chair of the Democratic Committee in Darby Borough. And I'm here to address also the movement of our voting poll. For one, I don't understand how someone, 1 or 2 people can go behind the backs of all the residents in the community and have our voting polls move without no concern or consent from the community. That is just flat out wrong. It needs to be changed. Let me just say that. 2 is it was moved basically because somebody had a personal issue. I'm the son of the young lady, Janice Davis. She's a councilwoman, and I followed her lead with helping the community. You don't have to be a council person to be effective in your community. So on every election, I work the polls. There are some that say I bully people when they come to vote. That is a lie. What I do is I hand out literature like you're supposed to, and if they have questions, I answer the questions. Here at the Darby Borough Recreation Center, we've never had an issue. I also heard that we were moved because of parking. First of all, when people come to vote, we have a big parking lot. It does share it with the police department, but there has never been an issue because people don't park and stay. People park and go. Now, working the polls at the junior high school, I have pictures here of the day in question of the last election where there were no signs directing people to a handicap entrance. I actually went and looked for the handicap entrance, and their handicap entrance isn't a handicap entrance. I'm not saying the school might not have one in the front where you can roll right in or walk right in, flat ground, but around the back of that gym where they have steps at, where I had to actually help the seniors up the steps, down the steps all day long. I'm talking about a person that takes off from his paid job to come volunteer at these polls every election. And I don't, and to sit there and watch these people have to suffer because our polls was moved for no reason at all. Because somebody didn't like somebody. So they went behind the backs of everybody in the community. You talked about disenfranchising people. Moving that pole over there was disenfranchising our residents. And it's not right. The steps are deplorable. The rebar is hanging out. In fact, Ms. Esther spoke about, I was there when the gentleman fell, leaned up against the bar fence, and it fell, gave way. Like, are we trying to help our residents to vote more safely, or are we just doing some personal stuff because you don't like somebody?
Madam Chair, the speaker's time has expired. Would you like to extend?
All right, if you wanted to share the pictures with the board, you're welcome to provide them to Mr. Allen. Thank you. And I hope you as well are able to stay for the discussion on that issue. Thank you.
I'm Andrea Knox from the Northern Precinct in Swarthmore. Other speakers have made really good points about why voting should be as accessible as possible, and I will echo those points without repeating them. Expanding voting, expanding access to voting is what democracy is about, and that's what we want to do. Based on what I've heard here this morning, I have two comments. The issue in Darby, those speakers are so heartfelt, and I can hear what problems they have. And I know, Ashley, you said you have concerns about moving a polling place 30 days before the election. And I appreciate those concerns, but it sounds to me as though there is a real need in Darby to get a place that's more accessible. And I hope that the board will be able to do that with working with the Darby people. I also wanted to comment on the hours at the proposed service centers. Again, as people have said, people work, a lot of commuters are not going to be coming off the subway in Upper Darby before the center closes at 4:30. And if there's a way to extend those hours, maybe by closing in the middle of the day if you don't have staff, I don't know what it would be, but I would think that extended hours either in the morning or in the evening or both a couple of days a week might be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Laura Shaw. I'm from Middletown 3-3. And I have two comments. One is I want to thank the election board for all your work. I know what it means to have a thankless job and you have one. So I just want to
We
thank
also all
you.
volunteered for it.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is I want to support your plan to have satellite places to vote. I want to say I'm retired and I own a car and I still hate coming here because of the parking and the hours and things like that. So anything we can do to make voting more accessible, I applaud you on and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
I didn't know so many people hated coming here.
Hi, Richard Shaw, Middletown 33. And thank you so much for what you do. You're a critical part of this whole process and we're in good hands. I just want to comment on the expansion of the voter service centers and the addition of those three. I think is just a super step. And I happen to drive around the county quite a bit and, especially to the Upper Darby area and then to Chester Heights. And I'll tell you, as you may know, you look at the traffic that it takes, the complexity of the roads, how congested this area is. And then your next step is trying to find a parking spot where you could, theoretically speaking, back down a one-way street backwards for a half a block to find a parking spot and then find out that's an illegal one. So just go on. So it's very tough. And then the walk-in is really quite a bit. So it's probably 45 minutes for most people to get to this thing from those outer areas. So getting those satellite locations would really help out democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill Fenninger, Deb Hinchy, Christine Crosby, and Joy Schwartz.
Please.
Hello, I'm Jill Fenninger, resident of Radnor Township 3-2. And I do support the expansion of the satellite offices, but that is not why I'm here today. I am here today to thank you, first of all, Jim and the board and the whole Bureau for all of your tireless efforts to prepare for the upcoming election. I am sure you all have faced, are facing, and will face lots of questions, comments, complaints, concerns, anxieties, including, I must admit, my frequent emails to Jim regarding the changing polling places in Radnor, to which you always responded promptly and with patience and kindness. I realize these are stressful times for all of us, but most particularly for those of you most directly involved with the election. So in this moment, let me stop and tell you how much I appreciate everything you do for Delaware County. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. That was nice. Please.
You love just straight gratitude.
I know. I mean, wow.
Hi, my name is Deborah Rose Hinchy. I'm a voter in Lansdowne. I'm also here to speak on behalf of the satellite election offices and to thank the board and Jim Allen for really taking it very, very seriously to make these accessible. I just want to point out that Chester and the location Upper Darby are two of the most transportation accessible parts of Delaware County, while Media is one of the most inaccessible parts of Delaware County. And it's very obvious that you guys understood that and like made a real effort to make sure that SEPTA went where you were putting these offices. I do want to talk about the hours because I do think that there is something in making these more accessible, considering some like important deadlines, right? The mail-in ballot request deadline is only 4 days before these locations open. They're only going to be open on one Saturday where people can order a mail-in ballot, and they're only gonna be open for 4 hours on that Saturday. You guys are doing a lot of work to make sure that these get open, but their ability to be used will be deeply impacted by when they are open and how often they are open. Even if you only had them open till 6 o'clock, you still have that like hour between when people get off from work and when they close for people to just shoot over there from 69th Street Terminal and make sure that they get their ballot. But at 4:30, you're really limiting that opportunity. I'm not necessarily going to argue like the 9 to noon on Saturdays. I would love 9 to noon on Sundays so that there are 2 weekend days where you can order a mail-in ballot. Right now, there's only 1 weekend day where you can order a mail-in ballot. They do open after the voter registration deadline, which is the 21st, but like at the end of the day, I don't know that you guys could have gotten them open much earlier than that, but please, please, please consider extending the hours to 6 p.m. and maybe being open on that Sunday, 9 to noon as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. Also, Jim, it was just said in this last speaker, but you do answer your emails incredibly promptly, and you are really working hard to make sure that the voters in Delaware County know what's going on. And so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz, good morning.
Good morning, Board of Elections. Joy Schwartz from Drexel Hill. I'd like to echo the sentiments of the people from Darby Borough concerning the polling place there having been changed apparently without their input. I had a friend call me also from Darby Borough saying that the middle school is terribly inconvenient for people that have to walk up the hill before the middle school. It's terribly inconvenient. And I would just urge this board to make it easy for people to vote in person. I have tremendous respect for the handicapped, the elderly who go out of their way to vote in person when it would be so easy just to get a mail-in ballot. And yet they see that as their duty. And for this board to discourage that would be very unfortunate. Anyway, I do also want to address the pop-up polling places, the satellite locations that you folks have. And first of all, I'm assuming that these are going to be stationary and not mobile. They're not voting ice cream trucks or anything like that? Okay, well, that's good. Secondly, I'm also concerned about the equity of these polling places, these satellite polling places. Where is the equity for the communities that are, have heavy Republican presence? Where is their pop-up satellite location? Communities such as Parkside, Trainer, Upland, communities that are also considered, perhaps low-income communities. Where is their pop-up voting site? And I think that the League of Women Voters should be very concerned about it as well, because this is a matter of equity. If we're going to put our finger on the scale to advantage certain areas of the county over others, that is not the right thing to do. Also, I have questions concerning the live stream of the drop boxes, which we have requested for many cycles now of this county, which is not impossible to provide, and yet I see nothing for the live stream of those boxes on the agenda. I would like to see live stream video of the drop boxes in Delaware County, all 37 of them. You can't live stream them, you have to man them. If you can't man them, you have to get rid of them. Let's see, aside from that, my question is to Mr. Allen especially. You did explain the purpose of the satellite offices, and you said that the purpose is for registration of voters.
No, I did not. I
What
said
is the purpose then, if you don't mind my asking?
registration deadline is the 21st of October. So the two purposes are to assist voters who want to receive it over the counter, apply for, show their ID. It has to be valid ID for that ballot to be counted, and receive the mail-in ballot and the related materials. And the second would be to provide notice and cure assistance to people who've discovered that they made a mistake, either by being notified by us or they discover it in their own homes or wherever they're completing the ballot packet.
Okay, so we're assisting them in voting then?
No, we're not assisting them in voting. We're assisting them with situations like they did not use the secrecy envelope and they sealed the envelope shut. Now what? So, or they lost their the barcoded return envelope with the unique correspondence code. Now what? So we can assist a voter with the materials. We're not assisting people in voting.
Troubleshooting in that case.
It's what we do at the vote. It's what we do here in media as
It's
well.
what we do in the polling place too, when someone spoils their
surrender your
ballot
ballot.
or they arrive in the wrong polling place.
Do in the satellite.
No, allow me to assist you. Allow me to assist you
Sure.
in understanding. There are a number of things that we do in the polling place on election day for all of our voters to protect their rights to vote, including making it very accessible through electronic poll books. So if they show up in the wrong site, you're able to print out a ticket and get them to the right site where all their votes will definitely count. They don't have to worry about the vagaries of a provisional ballot. We have provisional ballots for people who can't get to their other location because maybe they have to go to work, maybe they have a daycare situation, maybe they don't have time later in the day to return to the polling place or to get to the right polling place, or maybe it's close to 8 o'clock at night. We also help them with spoiled ballots. We have systems in the polling place that we don't have at the central count, where if they overvote their ballot, it automatically bounces it back so that they have the ability to spoil their ballot or make a correction, or if it's undervoted on the entire side, either side. So we have a number of things that we do to assist voters. I often, in talking with staff, we're really in the election business only off to the side. Our main function is actually education and information. So thank you for the opportunity to address that.
Do we have other public comment?
Yes, Karis Coker, Paula Richards, Sherry Luce, Michael Ballet or Ballet.
Good morning, Board
Good
of
morning.
Elections. Karis Coker, Concord Township. On the satellite offices, if it's just for distribution of voter services, that's one thing, but if it's for voting on site, no. There was a balance between access to voting and being able to provide and ensure the security of the vote. And the easier it is to vote, the harder it is to secure. So there has to be all of that taken into consideration, which I'm sure you're aware of. I have some further considerations on the question of oaths for those engaged in the operations of our elections. The consent of the governed is critical to the preservation of our free and self-government. Without consent of the governed, there is no representative government. But it's my understanding that earlier, Mr. Manley Parks had stated that any change in the oaths required for the election workers or employees had to be accommodated by the legislature. And there's a new oath that's in the for the judges of elections and others. And I would like him to clarify at some point in this meeting whether or not that change has been dictated by the state legislature or if it was produced by this county or this board or Mr. Allen or Mr. Parks. If he would please clarify the origin. All right. Pennsylvania law requires a loyalty oath by all employees. Let me read the law as it's stated. Relating to the loyalty to the United States and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania of public officers and employees. Officers and employees of state-aided institutions and all employees requiring oaths or affirmations by applicants for public office or employment by present appointed officers and employees, prohibiting appointment or employment after your hearing. That's regarding to other aspects of it. But anyway, the law requires that every employee of the government, including in the county, have a loyalty oath to the United States Constitution, that familiar phrase that they take an oath to uphold, support, and defend the Constitution. This is very clearly done in the precincts, at the precinct level, but it is not done at the wharf, or to my knowledge, at the warehouse. The oath that is there, the oaths that were written in the election code were at a time that it was expected that every employee had already taken the oath of allegiance to the Constitution. That's no longer being done, though it ought to be. It's a terrible oversight, though it is in keeping with the goals of the Communist Party as recorded in Congress in 1963, item number 13, to remove the loyalty oath. I hope this board will ensure that everyone working in our elections at the wharf of the precinct has the loyalty oath. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paula Richards. I am from Darby Borough. I have lived there 64 years. And my family's been there since 1903, and I've been a public servant my entire life since I was 18 years old. I am the elected committee person for the second ward in Darby Borough. I'm requesting the election board to continue keeping the polling places for the second ward at Penwood Middle School. They are the safest, most convenient polling place we've ever had. And I thank you for making that decision years ago, a few years ago. It really has benefited the residents. You've only moved the polling place 25 feet from where the second ward, second precinct had voted for 50 years, since 1970 at the Borough Hall. 25 feet over, now they're in the school. We've experienced a lot of passion in our town, as you heard previously, but that's not true. That school is safe for the children. How can it not be safe for the seniors? It has to be by law handicap accessible. It is handicap accessible. I have given a packet to Ms. Dunn, Mr. Allen, and 3 packets for you on the board with recent pictures from yesterday, today, the day before, that show all of the handicap access entrances on both sides of the building and a huge parking lot for 75 cars that's right, that has 4 to 6 handicap spaces right at the door that's flat that goes right into the gymnasium. And if you don't want to use the gymnasium, you can use the cafetorium, which that also has a handicap access. It's completely safe. It's not safe at the recreation center. The recreation center is combined with our police department. And Darby Borough is the place where 11 municipalities, 11 police departments come day and night, 24 hours a day. We have the live scan, and all of the police officers that arrest their suspects in Alden, Yaden, Lansdowne, East Lansdowne, Clifton Heights, Fallcroft, Darby Township, Sharon Hill.
Madam Chair, the speaker's time has expired. Would you like to extend?
No, I get the point. You're saying this is where they bring people into custody. Okay. Are you also able to stay? I mean, you have a different point of view than already expressed, but this is going to be a big discussion with the Ms. Dunn and Mr. Allen. So I do want to, if you can stay, I hope you can. If you can't, just everybody let me know.
Yes, if you
Okay.
could look at these.
I do. I think that at the right time, I will ask that he bring all the materials brought by everybody here.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Good morning. My
Good
name
morning.
is Sherry Luce. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Never sure with my height. I am in Radnor 3-2. I'm a lifelong resident of Delaware County, starting out in Garnet Valley and now 34 years in Radnor. I am also the program director for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for Red, Wine, and Blue. We are a nonpartisan organization representing 600,000 women in the country, a little more than 25,000 now here in Pennsylvania, and over 1,500 in just Delaware County. It's a fast-paced world out here today. So making sure that every eligible voter has access to vote, access to the ballot box is really critical. The only way to keep a healthy democracy is to make sure everyone has access. An important innovation are the satellite offices. This will extend the services to reach out to people who need these benefits. First way is making it accessible. You're going to bring it out an opportunity for people to come in even before Election Day, closer to their home, to their workplaces. You're reducing barriers to busy schedules, limited transportation access, and mobility. Anytime we make it more convenient and more inclusive for all voters, we win. People, I mean, not a party. Secondly, you're reducing congestion on Election Day by letting people go and take care of their issues before Election Day. Again, giving confidence in them for a smoother voting process. I also like that it's going to offer the personalized support and assistance. I had an issue the last time. I vote by mail because I work the polls for the entire day outside of my home area. And it's important. I would prefer to vote in person because I love the feeling of doing that. But I like that I can do it this way and still then do my civil service to help people out. Anytime you do this, again, the support for people to come to a location, get their envelopes fixed, make sure they understand the ballot, what's going on is a real help. But most of all, Delaware County, as we know, the 2020 population for seniors in 2020 census was 17.6% of our county. That's a 3.3% rise just from 2010. So we have satellite offices there that would play a critical role in helping the population of seniors a more convenient way for them to vote. Going in, avoiding long lines, it's really vital to help our seniors who have mobility issues or health challenges. We're a democracy, our version of it, but that means we are of the people, by the people, and for the people. That means it is our responsibility to ensure every citizen's voice can count. The satellite election offices embody this idea by making it accessible and empowering everyone from every walk of life here in Delaware County the right to vote. It's in the best interest when we do.
Madam Chair, the speaker's time has expired. Would you like to extend?
If you're, thank you. Well, we'll let you do that. I'll extend for that. Thank you. sir.
Good morning. I'm Mike Belay. I live in Newtown 2, number 2. And I'm here coming in support of all the work that this board has done over the past 4 or 5 years or so. The new technology in the polling places, the implementation of the mail-in balloting processes, the drop boxes, the satellites. And this is the first meeting I've ever been to. I learned a lot already this morning at the meeting. There's probably many things I do not know about, but I'm can't be more supportive of the fact that you folks have worked tirelessly to expand the accessibility of the ballot box and accessibility and these. And clearly from the discussion this morning, there's more opportunities for you to do that, and I encourage you to do that. Having said all that, you alluded several times to the fact that this is a very important and unique election this time. Let me just say that I'm part of several groups that work to get out the vote. I've worked the polling place before COVID and since COVID, and I work at the polling places, so I do see what goes on there. I have a very major concern about the safety of poll workers and voters at the polls, physically at the polls this year. And I don't really know what the solution to that is, but I pay attention to things I get in the mail and other things. I haven't seen a lot of information for the public about what measures you folks have taken to ensure security and safety at the polls. Just an idea that occurs to me, and there's probably better ideas, something posted at the polling place that I know you folks are training poll workers and all those things, and I'll actually be participating in some of those. But in terms of the public and making sure the public understands they're safe, something like a very visible poster of some sort, maybe the rules, but more importantly, with the do's and the don'ts. What things are allowed for the public and others to do at the polls, and what things are not allowed, and what are the measures of safety? Anything you can do maybe I've missed it, but to educate the people that do want to come to the polls and do their duty and vote, we want to make sure they think it's safe. And that would be helpful, I think, in the process. So again, thank you for all your work. And I know you always have more to do.
Speaker's time has expired. Would you like to extend?
Thank you. And no, I think we're good, but I do, Mr. Allen, when we get to your report, if we could talk something about safety, there's nothing more important besides being consistent with the law and voting than with everybody being able to safely and vote. Otherwise, we don't have a democracy. So I would, Mr. Allen, when we get to your report, if we could talk a little bit about that, I appreciate it. We do take that very seriously and have had meetings and conversations. Mr. Allen and I were on the phone yesterday talking about this very issue. So I appreciate that. Any other public comment?
Sean Sheehan, Charlene Laws, Jean Montgomery, and Quincy Carpenter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Sean Sheehan. I'm from the Borough of Rutledge, where I proudly serve on Borough Council. I'm here to speak in support of the opening of the satellite offices, not just for the locations, but also to consider those expanded hours, those accessible hours. We've heard a lot of folks talk today about, some folks work mornings, some folks work evening, childcare. We also have a lot of folks who work multiple jobs. And a lot of the effort around getting out the vote right now is just about making a plan. And by creating accessible, multiple locations with accessible hours, we're better serving folks in making that plan to get out to vote. So not going to take too much time here, but please consider not only opening those satellite locations, but offering the hours that allow people to make that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Charlene Laws. I am Chester City Joe for 1-2, and I'm representing Chester City 1-8. After receiving note, and we've been Joes at that location for over 10 years.
Thank you for your service in that capacity.
And thank you too. You guys have made significant changes, and I appreciate all the changes that made things much quicker, much faster, and more convenient for all. I'm here today about the poll change location. Jim and I were at your last meeting, we voiced our concerns about that, and we were given an option to look for another location. We found one and communicated that last Thursday, October 3rd. We were asked to at least check out the new location. We agreed to that, made an appointment, and right after Jim communicated that we had made an appointment, we received an email saying that asking the new location, Stetzer, to welcome us. The email stated it was not a good fit for our previous temporary location in Parkside, which I don't understand because Dave Lammy, the chief, was fine with us. We had great interaction throughout the entire election process that day. But anyway, the email goes on to state that even though Stetzer is not an ideal location because it's farther away from Parkside and our original location, the machine warehouse staff verified there's enough space for 5 precincts. Jim and I went this past Monday to look at the site, and we both found it not suitable for 5 precincts. Jim and I both have a large voting block of people that come in, and that spot is less than half the size of this room, not even including your area. And we have very strong concerns about privacy. These people will be standing over top of each other. And those, even though the equipment is much more, not as bulky as the previous, you have to line it up properly, as you know. And we just don't see how we can do that and provide the privacy that most people expect and want. So that is our concern. Our biggest concern, though, was, well, I shouldn't say biggest concern. Another concern was we didn't get a reply. When we let you guys know that we had found a location, we never got a reply. We heard it from someone who had been at the city council meeting on our Wednesday that we were still at Stetzer. So no one had got back to us and said, okay, we know you checked the place out, but we don't find it suitable. We just heard it from our third party. I don't know why. And I know what you said about under 30 days being an issue, but privacy is an issue. And if nothing changes, what I would like.
The speaker's time has expired.
Okay, sir. Are you essentially finished?
That the Joes be considered in looking at new polling locations.
And I think,
That's it.
and when we get to that, again, yours is a different issue than the Darby as I hear, but if you're able to stay, we're going to get to the polling locations. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, I think the polling locations she's referring to are different than the ones on this agenda. Is that right?
She represents 2-2 and
That is
8-2,
correct.
so it's a different.
So we'll just
Yeah,
see if we can address that in the same report.
absolutely. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jean Montgomery, and I am a council person in Chester Heights. I'm here to support the satellite offices. I had the privilege years ago during COVID to work in Upper Darby, the old Litz building, and I could see the satisfaction and the help that we were able to give to people that were coming in on a Saturday morning after work. I think will be wonderful in Chester Heights. We have a demographic of a lot of seniors. Chester Heights is one small area of only 4,000 people. However, we have Concord, Thornbury, Chadsford, Bethel, and the number of over 55 living places. I think it will be much more convenient. I always refer back, I've been a mail-in ballot person. I advocate for that, but many people I'm talking to feel like this is the year they want to come out. And I think that we can alleviate some of the crowds in media and some of the polling locations by getting things corrected, et cetera. And people can go and put their mail-in ballot. I refer back to 30 years ago when I was a young mother and working in a city and chose not to vote a couple of times because I couldn't pick up the kids for daycare. So whatever we can do to make things better for people and convenient, I think is good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You raised an issue. I had someone just asked me recently, similar idea that they had gotten a mail-in ballot. They always vote by mail, but they want to vote in person. And so just to reiterate for the public, can you, Mr. Allen, just briefly just describe how they might do that if they received a mail-in ballot? again, you said it somewhat in the earlier report, but just clearly on this issue of if you change your mind and in this election you want to vote in person, how do you do it?
Yes, so to give the members of the public who are here and the voting public who may be watching some context, in 2020, before I arrived here in the height of the pandemic, Delaware County received 170,000 applications, processed 170,000 applications to vote absentee or by mail. And approximately 130,000 of those were returned. Many of the people who applied chose instead to go to their polling place or perhaps never return their envelope or it was lost in the mail, one of those three. If you receive your absentee or mail ballot and you decide that you don't want to use that and you want to instead vote in person in your precinct on election day, bring both the ballot and the barcoded return envelope, the one that you would sign and date. If you bring those two items and remit those two items, you're required by law to be able to receive a standard election day ballot. They'll log you in as having remitted those materials so that it's a show that you have not used those. If you go to the polling place and you leave the mail or absentee ballot materials at home, or you fail to bring both of the items, the ballot and the return envelope, you will still have the chance to vote, but on a provisional ballot. And the reason for that is that allows us to receive the provisional ballot and make sure that the voter did not, in fact, use the mail or absentee ballot. So we're able to assess that after election day to make sure. And then if they did not return it, we did not receive it by election day, it was not processed or counted, then the provisional ballot can be added to the count. So those are the two ways in which mail absentee voters may participate on election day.
Thank you. And it's not necessary, but I just advise the person, if you're unsure of what to bring the whole package if you can, because then you'll be sure to have covered it. But some people have thrown out different things as part of their decision. So thank you for both options, Mr. Allen. Is there any other public comment? Are we done the list? Does anybody else feel compelled? Because if not, I'm going to move really quickly to the next. All right. Thank you all for your comments. It's valuable for us to hear. All right. Mr. Allen, your report, and there have been a couple.
I recommend that we
go to the
go to
Darby. I think
Darby
that's
and
a great idea. Since we've heard the public comment on that.
And as well as the voter service centers first, if that's okay with the board.
Absolutely. Should we do the precinct polling place relocations first then? Let's.
Sure.
It's just as a group, because that way Ms. Dunn doesn't have to come up and down, up and down.
By way of introduction, we have with us here Jackie Dunn, who is the manager, the chief custodian, which is an antiquated term for the voting machine warehouse, and Olin Yancey. Together, both of them are heavily involved in analyzing polling place changes, finding the optimum location wherever possible, and also assessing as part of that the compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, because polling places, unlike other public facilities such as libraries, firehouses, what have you, are under stricter guidelines under the Americans with Disability Act, so that if something is grandfathered in as a library because it was built in the late 50s, it can't be grandfathered in as a polling place. So we take that issue very seriously. And I would like both of you, if you could, to introduce first, let's talk about the Chester City 2 moves that we're having, and then also to address the Darby Borough examinations that you performed.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, you wanted me to address the Chester City, the Stetzer School, or the one? Okay.
Well, let's start with that one, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. We're talking about the 8-2?
1-2 and 1-8, which we moved a couple of meetings
1-8,
ago.
I had, the numbers didn't stick at all in my head, clearly. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to express that we have looked.
Oh,
high
would you,
and low.
sorry, just because some people may not know you,
Sorry, my name.
just tell them what your responsibilities are and both of you when you speak.
My name is Jackie Dunn. I'm the warehouse supervisor. I am the person who tries to find polling locations that will meet ADA requirements. And this is my, one of my techs, Olin Yancey, who is the technician and takes the survey and literally goes out knocking on doors or stopping in any possibilities that we may be able to use for a polling location. Chester City, for 1-2 and 1-8, it was very hard to find a location.
Very hard.
Olin went out just about every day, looking in every possible area. We were able to ask Stetzer School if they would be able to take another 2 precincts, and Olin went out, did a survey, and it is large enough. And actually, they're giving us a extra part of that room, I believe.
Yes, now I have access to the full room.
Which will have enough space for the polling locations. There is parking, not the best parking for handicap, but there's like 7 spots. That's right there by the door, so people can get in who need to use the handicap way. And I'm hoping, we're checking into to see if we can have the street that's right in front of that parking lot. Maybe police signs where you cannot park from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So there'll be more parking right out front. And then there is another parking lot on the side. So I understand we can look into other options, but being so close to an election, I try not to move things unless there's a really valid reason. So that I would like to keep at Stetzer School.
And this is something that came up before in another meeting, but I think there was a concern presented about the space being small. It sounds like there'll be expanded space, but the concern was about privacy. I don't know if there's an opportunity and you're communicating with the Joes, it would be maybe helpful for them to understand how you might recommend setup so that there can be the maximum amount of privacy for the voters.
Sure, I can speak with whomever. I'm sorry, what was your name? Charlene. Yes, we can talk afterwards if you like, if it makes you feel, okay.
And because I think the other concern that she raised was making sure communications was thorough. So I'm hoping that you all can, I know you all do great work and it's really hard sometimes to find locations and they're not always ideal. Just like we'll talk to Mr. Allen about hours and whether they're ideal, right? I mean, these are issues that are really hard, but I would love for you all to have that communication. It's not like an order or a command. I appreciate it because that's what we want to do. So thank you.
Okay, in regards to Darby Borough
I
two.
have a
sorry.
follow-up.
Oh,
as
please,
well.
yeah.
I know the
Sorry.
other, I know there are other polling places that are similar size that have as many precincts throughout the county, so it's not a unique problem. I know we'll find a good solution there. The other concerns raised, though, were the distance of the voters who live in those precincts to that location, and to the point that the judge of election raised about an alternative location that was presented to us on Thursday. Did I understand that correctly? That there's been an alternative location proposed? Has that been examined or considered? Is there issues with that third location?
Yes, I brought it up.
Can you step to the mic, Olin,
Yes, sir.
please?
Yes, it was brought up and it actually passed inspection, but there's other things that we have to look into before we can actually make that officially a polling place.
Such as?
Such as I haven't even been able to contact the person who owns it and also get confirmation on whether it'd be ready or not.
Is there construction going on there?
right now?
Yes.
So is this more of a long-term possible solution? I mean, I will acknowledge you in a second, even though we don't normally take from the audience. These are the things that I want to have better communication about. But so there's an option that might be viable currently under construction?
Yes, and hopefully we can make that the new permanent home for the site, which was permanent, the precinct, which was permanently Chester Park.
Okay, thank you for asking about that. I missed that nuance.
But we're in an uncertain situation heading into this election because of
Less than 30 days, and that's why
Yeah,
then you anticipated that concern. Okay, so would you at this point recommend looking at that for future elections?
Yes, I would, most definitely.
Okay.
The space is adequate, the parking is adequate. Unfortunately, just due to the time, because I just looked at it this past Monday, did a survey on it, and that was what, the 7th? Being as though the election is next month on the 5th, that's less than a month.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate you exploring it during this busy time too, because we do want to find the right locations for the voters that
Yeah,
are.
and also just let me state too, that as far as everything that's being presented here today, as far as the changes and relocations, trust me, Chief Custodian gets on us and we're on it. She takes every complaint seriously, and me and a few other technicians, we go out to these places, survey, and we leave it up to you guys to whether you approve it or not. But I need your guys to know that there are regulations that the county has to go through in picking any given polling precinct. And it's strict, it's firm, it's fair, but nonetheless, there's a process that we have to go to, and each place has to be good.
And I would say, I would strongly favor moving it into a place that was a better location, closer for the voters. But one thing, just for the benefit of the public who may not be familiar with construction project management, but even if they tell you we're going to be done on this date, my experience in construction is that it's always later. There's always something you don't expect. There's always some delay, and it would make me very nervous this close with an uncertain completion date. So I appreciate the work you put into examining this thoroughly.
And don't leave, because I think we're going to come up to some of those questions about, there's been safety concerns at other locations. I do want to say, I didn't ask Mr. McLean, do you have any? Okay. No question. Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. Darby Borough 2-1 and 2-2. I did receive a petition to ask for it to be moved to the Recreation Center where it was held before, expressing that Penwood Middle School is not ADA. It doesn't meet the requirements. I have sent a technician out every time I received an email or a phone call to make sure that it's accessible. And each time and each different technicians went out there, and it is handicap accessible.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there's a period for public comment and there's a period for the people who work for the board to speak to the board. And this isn't a free-for-all. And if you don't contain yourselves, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, so what was?
Oh, no. So, all right. So there were a lot of concerns that I heard. I jotted down some. I hope up here or others will remember. There were concerns about 3 steps. There was concerns about a ramp. There was concerns about a rebar.
Inadequate signage.
Inadequate signage, which that seems like a concern in every case. We get a lot, and if it happens, we can fix. Then wheelchair accessible, and then I guess there was a historical concern raised during public comment about how this happened. I think it's been at this location for a while. So if you could just walk through what you know about all of that. I know you weren't the warehouse supervisor then, but you were there. If you know any of that history, it
Yes.
would be helpful.
Well, there were concerns few elections back of the size, the parking, the police station with a lot of traffic.
You're talking about the rec center.
The rec center, yeah.
And this is only 2-2, right?
Yes. My next statement is going to be 2-1 has been moved to Penwood Middle School, I believe 4 years ago. And it passed ADA requirements. This location is with that location, same room, same school. So again, we did the survey. It has a ramp. It goes right into the parking lot, right up to the door, the hallway, and then you turn and the gymnasium's right there. And again, being so close to the election, I feel that it's not a good idea. I try not to move locations when it's this close to an election. I recommend it stay at Penwood Middle School. There is, to me, no reason it needs to be moved. It meets ADA requirements, and it is a school which we prefer to use as a polling location.
Do you happen to know the history? And I guess there's 2-1 and 2-2 or sorry, 2-1 and 2-2. There's different concerns perhaps about the history, but what history do you know about the original move, if at all? I mean, it was during COVID, right? So it was.
Yeah, I just came in on that election. I wasn't even with that department. I was just placed there.
Well, let's talk about then 2-2.
Okay,
You had mentioned that there were different concerns.
there were the concerns of the parking of being too congested, too much trafficking going in and out due to the police station. So, and I received a few complaints about that and concerns, and they asked me to see if I can find a location. So I looked into Penwood Middle School, where 2-1 has already been. And so I placed 2-2 in with 2-1. Just, it's a school and it passes ADA requirements.
Okay, and so, just so I understand, so there were concerns raised and that's what led you ultimately to move.
To look into finding.
And
possible
the individuals in the audience who public comment, they indicated that they thought I'm going to characterize it, so I don't mean to do any injustice to your words, but they characterized those concerns as being perhaps overblown, that the police station is not a safety issue or a concern, that there was an opposing view on that. They had concerns about the parking and accessibility being better at the rec center. Can you
Okay,
speak to some of those issues?
When I received the concerns at the rec center, I have reached out to the 2 party leaders.
Mhm.
And both party leaders agreed and they were okay with moving it to Penwood Middle School. I have the email here with them telling me, yes, they would like it there. And that's what I based my decision off of, moving it.
And so are you making a recommendation related to the petition? You've already indicated that you recommend against Darby Borough 2-1 being moved. What is your recommendation as to 2?
I recommend Darby Borough 2-2 to stay at the Penwood Middle School.
And you did talk about, but just to be very specific and particularly for you, sir, as you've looked at it, serious concerns were raised about the safety for wheelchair accessibility and other things, parking. Can you talk to that and what you noticed when you reviewed Penwood Middle School? They were saying it was not as accessible as the rec center.
Yes, and before I share that, let me let everyone know that Chief Custodian, she's really was concerned about this. Every time she got an email or anything about it, she sent one of us out. And we visited the school on a few occasions. She sent out a couple technicians to survey this place. Even the last time, 2 technicians went out. But I'm here to let everybody know that those steps, next to those steps, there's a parking lot. In that parking lot, it's more parking. There's also more handicap parking spaces. And also from the parking lot, there's handicap access to get into the gym.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
It is true, sir. And we
Well,
have
we're
video
not-
I would.
and
We're not doing that.
pictures.
We're not doing that. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the other members of the board about this?
One point I would just make from the legal side is that there is a process here, and anytime a polling place is moved, a notice is posted at the polling place at least 5 days in advance of the proposed move, and that is then addressed. It's on the agenda here at the Board of Elections meeting. That agenda is publicly posted both in papers of general circulation and on the website multiple days before the meeting. All of the meetings since 2020 have been broadcast both live on, as you can see, the equipment here, and are saved and available through the website, if I remember correctly, to watch later if you happen to be not available during the time of the board meeting itself to watch it live. So there are a number of steps being taken towards clarity, transparency, and advance notice for any polling place move that's being considered, other than the type of thing that comes up every once in a while where a tree falls on some polling place 3 days before election. We have to move it on an emergency basis.
Right.
I just want to emphasize that we've been at 2-1 at Penwood Middle. This will be our 9th consecutive election. And before this autumn, late this summer, we weren't receiving complaints. For 2-2, this will be our 4th consecutive election. So we have a couple of items here where we're going to move polling places because we have to, because we're returning to the original location that was used in the last presidential election in one case, and because we were the landlord of the other site refuses to allow us to be a polling place in that. this is not one of those cases. And to move voters 25 days before when we don't have to, I back the chief custodian on this 110%.
Well, I mean, I have expressed my concerns about the timing of this if there, and I agree with Mr. Allen and Ms. Dunn that when we have emergencies, we need to move polling places this close to an election. That's unfortunate. And it's always a concern to make sure the voters are aware. But I think in the long term, we talked about in Chester, in long term, just thinking about this, I would have asked, it sounds like you've examined it many times, but if we can examine again the idea of whether or not maybe it's not 2-1, maybe it's 2-2, but whether any polling locations should or could be moved appropriately in a timely way, or it needs to be just better for the voters, right? That's it. So you will make the judgment on that, and I'm not prejudging that. It sounds like under the circumstances where we have an accessible location that's been used for 4 cycles and for 9 cycles, 25 days before the election, absent a accessibility issue at that location, sir, I'm just not going to, I don't want to disrupt voters in that way. I do think it's very risky when we do that because every time we move a location, someone will go to the wrong location. And every time that happens, even when we put out notices, I mean, we have the Radnor notices, we've gone above and beyond, done 3 notices instead of 1, and given notices to the community members who are putting out notices. I drive by Radnor and see the signs that say, do you know where your polling location is? You know, and here's a QR code or whatever it is. So we just need to take that. But your long-term concerns about the move should be considered again, as I know that they will. So that's my view on it.
And I'll just further commit. I make the rounds on election day. I visit polling places that I have questions about to see how they operate, on the day of. And I commit, I will stop by Penwood Middle School and I will check it out, on election day, put my own eyes on it for consideration in a future election. I believe that people are coming to us with valid concerns. I believe that you guys are doing great work in doing the inspections and making sure we're compliant. And that everything is done according to Hoyle. But I do want to take your concern seriously. I will be there on election day. I will swing by and I will see, what it actually looks like in operation. So.
Thank you. Okay. Should we move on that? That is an isolated issue is that we need to move whether or not there's a motion.
Given that there was a petition filed, I would recommend or request that the board please consider a motion to continue to have to use Penwood Middle School for Darby Borough 2-1 and 2-2.
Does anybody on the board make that motion, adopt that motion? I'll adopt that motion for the purposes.
I'm sorry, so moved.
Okay.
Oh, second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as stated by Mr. Allen, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion passes. Thank you. All right.
Next are Chester City 2-4 and Chester City 5-2. And this is one of those situations where we had no choice but to move because it was in a ballroom and the owners declined to allow us to be a polling place this time. Jackie?
Okay. Again, Olin going out and looking for a location in the area here. With plenty of suggestions that we looked into, we were able to reach out to Guy C. Long Incorporation, located at 709th Street in Chester. Olin went out and did a survey, meets 8-day requirements. It passed.
What is it?
It is a construction business warehouse.
Okay.
It's,
3rd generation.
yes.
But it's a warehouse. It's a warehouse.
Yeah, it's been there for years.
And just for documentary purposes, the paperwork we have indicates the type of building as municipal, so it's not correct if it says municipal there.
Yes, it's a garage, what building is that in? Just a construction warehouse building?
Okay.
It's a private
Yes.
facility.
Construction company.
We posted the signs and we party leaders actually gave us the suggestions. So we do have a bipartisan on that location.
Okay. I see here in the forms, I know that you'll provide signage for handicap accessibility.
Yes.
I think I'm just going to ask off cycle, but if we could also make sure that we provide additional signs for the Penwood.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Okay. Any questions about this? Should we do we have bipartisan agreement for the second one as well? So let's do them both
Yes.
together. So if you could present that.
Okay, Chester Township 2, currently located at the Wilson Center at 1150 Engel Street. The party leaders actually contacted me. The renovations from the past location has been completed, and they wanted to move back to the Chester Township Fire Company, Feltonville. I sent Olin out to do a survey, past 8A requirements, plenty of space. We posted the signs, so I'd like to recommend moving Chester Township 2 from the Wilson Center to Chester Township Fire Company.
How long had it been moved because of the construction? How many cycles?
I want to say two elections.
Elections, okay. So this is one where people would be going back to a familiar location if they lived there
Yeah.
before, but at the same time, it's definitely close to election. So how are we going to make sure that that is reinforced, that return to the,
Well,
With-
go ahead.
Go ahead. With any change, we have to enter it into the Shore system, and then we perform a mailing to each and every voter in that affected precinct.
right? We also post signs,
That's correct.
right? Okay. And you're saying both party leaders have asked for that. So
Yeah.
they're presumably mindful that each side has a reason to want to get out their voters
Mhm,
Okay.
yes. To the right place.
to the right place. Sorry. Yeah, their voters to the right place. Yes, fair enough. That's important. Okay, any questions?
No.
No? Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the precinct polling place relocations for Chester City 2, 4, and 5-2 to Guy C. Long, Inc., and Chester Township 2 to return to the Feltonville Fire Company?
That's my mistake. It's the Chester Township Fire Company. It's correctly reflected in the survey package.
Okay.
I will, so moved.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed. That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we've addressed everything that was on the list for you all, but thank you. I have to say, I mean, the rules are really, really strict. Mr. Allen had mentioned to me that there was a location that I happened to be right by for one of my daughter's basketball games. And I went, and I thought it might be accessible. So I called him and said, it looks like it could be accessible. And then you all went out and did a survey, and he's like, you are so wrong. You do not know the rules. They are very, very specific about certain things. And so I appreciate the good work you're doing. Thank you
You're
both. And thank you for coming.
I would like to encourage folks listening who may be owning properties that have ramps. It's a good idea to put handrails on those. That's the one deficiency we see a lot. It's a minor one, but it can be important for some people. So
Yeah.
please install ramps. Please install handrails on your ramps.
And Mr. Allen, I think you wanted to move to letter C, 6C next.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Potential satellites.
There were lots of comments raised about that. Mr. Allen, I do want to give you, I did ask you to present at least some of what you intended to present before public comment to make sure that public comment could be focused on your recommendations. But there were numerous people who were concerned about different things, one of which is primarily the hours. I know you've thoughtfully considered this personally. I'm sure you would agree that those aren't ideal hours that you've recommended. So, but I wouldn't have thought that they would be recommended without thought. So I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to speak to that issue.
Well, I mean, I take the comments very seriously, but I also want to make sure that we're going to be able to properly staff these sites. If there's a desire to do as we do at the media site, to offer later hours, one day a week, it didn't, on Wednesday. I would hope that we could explore possibly shifting that day to something like 12 to 8 so that we're not trying to stretch staff over a super long day. I realize in a perfect world, we could offer from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 5 days a week, and then, 8 hours on Saturday as well. Somebody mentioned Sunday hours, and I really can't emphasize enough how many of our staff members are already putting in 6 and 7 days a week now. We have to be mindful of our capacity to recharge and tackle the day fresh and not wear people out or push them to the point that they don't think it's worth it. So I appreciate the concerns that were raised. At the same time, I would hope that, the board be mindful that, we don't have unlimited resources and unlimited staffing to extend the hours, more than that.
No, I appreciate that. That's why I want to make sure you had an opportunity to speak to it. Of course, I think we haven't voted on whether we're going to do it at all, but to the extent that we do it, do vote, we should consider how to give flexibility for you to, I would appreciate if you did explore the 1 day a week idea and shifting it so that there are some evening hours available. But let's first move to the discussion about whether to do it at all. I expect that my colleagues will both want to speak to that issue, although I could be wrong, but Mr. McBlain, would you like to speak to that?
Is there a motion at this point? I mean,
We could move for the purposes of discussion. Is there a motion to approve? So then I need to build in that flexibility to approve the proposal for the satellite offices as presented by Mr. Allen with the flexibility to adjust hours as he determines can be properly staffed and the resources that he has. There has to be some flexibility in that motion for him to staff it appropriately. So can I do it that way, Mr. Parks? Can I move that way? Okay.
Yeah, I would
If you
make,
can.
I would make that motion and to allow longer hours as resource permits at the discretion of the director. Sure.
I'll second that motion. And for discussion, Mr. McBlain.
so, when I came onto this board in September of 2021, I did it at that point in time because, I had been there, election night of 2020 and, the aftermath of that. And I was concerned at the time that the public, and there were many people from my party who I thought were distorting, what had occurred in Delaware County in 2020. And so I thought it important that, that if I could offer my services to, number one, make sure that we had, fair and secure elections. And number two, tell the public that. If that's what I thought that was occurring. And I will say, since the time I've come onto the board, I've said it before, I do believe that Delaware County has had secure elections and we've had fair elections. I've lost votes, here, but I never thought that it was in any way partisan or directed at something. The issue of voter services centers, although listed on our agenda at various points this year, has never really been discussed. The one time I do believe it was discussed a couple of months ago, the advice was that we weren't going to have them because we didn't have the staff to do it. We didn't have the equipment to do it. We didn't know where it was going to be. And really, there hasn't been much discussion at all, other than just, it routinely just gets put on the agenda until 2.5 weeks ago, where things got brought up and, apparently the train was back on the tracks without any discussion about how we would go about doing this, how we would offer it to municipalities, how it would be determined. And I was amazed at the end of the meeting that the attorney for the Delaware County Democratic Party came up to Mr. Allen as I was standing there chatting and said that we have our volunteers ready to staff the polling, the voter services centers. Thankfully, Mr. Allen said, that, whether we have that or not, we're not going to have partisan volunteers that are going to staff it. But their situation where the Delaware County Democratic Party apparently knew more than I did about the proposals for voter services centers. So there's been no discussion about this. There's been no discussion about the locations. And it strikes me that the locations are in densely populated Democratic areas. And like I said, up to now, I really respectfully believe that this board has acted in a nonpartisan manner and has made great decisions for the fair and secure conduct of elections. But this is nothing more than a get out the vote effort for densely Democratic areas. Why weren't all municipalities afforded the opportunity or even asked who might be willing to do that? I don't agree that transportation is superior to, the Upper Darby Municipal Building. It's on the very edge of the county. And same as the city of Chester. It's on the very edge of the county. It's on the river. There is this, the public transportation to Chester City Hall is not superior to getting to Media Borough, nor is the transportation to Upper Darby Municipal Building. We've had no discussion about what the cost of this is going to be. Who is it that's going to staff it? Again, the last advice that I remember hearing publicly is that we didn't have the staff to do this. And then perhaps there was going to be, well, maybe temporary workers doing it. Is that what we're going to have, is temps with very limited training that are going to be staffing these places? There has not been the present need. The only time this county has had the voter services centers satellite offices were during the 2020 pandemic. And it was funded by the Zuckerberg grants at the time. There was perhaps a need for that at that time, but there's no present need for these. There's not lines here in media. There's no issue, or I would ask, what is the issue regarding, how are we going to assure to the public that these places are secure? Are we going to have watchers? Are we going to allow authorized representatives to do that? What has been the training for the workers to do this? All this has been done in the dark. I hear today that the State League of Women Voters put out the call to come and talk about this today. Again, they apparently have more information than I do regarding the voter services centers. I just, like I said, I'm proud to be a member of this board, but I will say at this point, this unfortunately, I believe, has been nothing more than a partisan decision. And and unless there's further discussions and a lot of these things are answered, I don't see the need for them. And I just believe that this is a partisan exercise.
I'm disappointed that you believe that. I've personally, I've supported them in 2020. I have encouraged Mr. Allen at numerous board meetings, as you mentioned, to explore this. I frankly, as I mentioned earlier, thought that he was skeptical as to whether he could create the safe and staffing opportunities to do it. But I, having worked with Mr. Allen for his entire tenure here, have not ever thought that he would make a decision about locations that were based on partisan get out the vote efforts. I haven't seen him as partisan at all. In fact, I've never asked him, don't even know what party he is. Because
he made the decision about work.
Well, I'm
not saying Mr. Allen is, I'm saying that I believe there's probably outside influence on this.
Well, I definitely think that we'll allow Mr. Allen at the right time to respond to anything that he chooses, because he is making the recommendation. And again, I didn't know that he would make a recommendation either to actually do it, and was pleased when we got that recommendation, but wasn't sure we could do it. No, Mr. Allen and I have had numerous conversations, and he can validate this, where he's told me he's not sure he's going to be able to do this. It's not sure that he can find the staffing, find a location, get it all set up correctly. But I'll let him speak to that to the extent he would like to. But Mr. Alberts, are there any comments that you would like to make?
Yeah, and in terms of the information, I know that Mr. McLean, you and I and Chair Lunkenheimer have had lots of individual conversations with our director, and we also hear it from our party and our parties and advocates. And in terms of what I expected, I'm pleasantly surprised. I expected I would have the tantalizing possibility of a voter center in my hometown in Upper Darby. It looks like the other locations are still on the docket, for at least we're going to attempt to open them. And that's very encouraging, as I've been very forthright that I think these are a good service to offer to the voters. Anything we can do to make voting more accessible, easy to access for folks, I'm in support of. In terms of the locations, I honestly, I don't understand an argument that Upper Darby is not more transit accessible to more people than any other part of the county. It is the most transit accessible location outside of Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia area. In fact, if you look at forget buses, just look at light rail and trolley lines. I believe 35% of all registered voters live along either in Upper Darby Township or along the 102 trolley or in Haverford Township serviced by the old PNW line, the Norristown High Speed line. The woman from Radnor who said that coming to Upper Darby was more convenient to media doesn't even factor into that equation when I'm thinking about accessibility, but apparently for someone at Radnor, it's a very convenient location. Ms. Schwartz raised the point about Chester City Hall and this not being a convenient location, and the three municipalities she mentioned as being Republican municipalities that aren't being served by this are Parkside, Trainer, and Upland. They all are adjacent to Chester. And for the record, while they may be governed by Republican boards, two of them are a Democratic majority in registration. One of them is a Democratic plurality. So it's, I don't care who's in a municipal government, who's in charge, what party can vary for reasons that have nothing to do with party. They could have just entirely local issues, right? And I care about how we're serving the voters regardless of the registration. And it just so happens that these are the most densely populated urban centers in our county. It's where most people live in the densely populated urban parts of the county. The fact that those people happen to register as Democratic more than they register Republican is a thing that, as you know, changes over the decades. I think these are great locations. Chester Heights certainly is about as purple of a place as you can imagine. I believe it currently has a Democratic board and a Republican mayor. It's gone back and forth many times over the past cycles. The registration's about even, I think. If we were to think about who doesn't have cars and who needs transit accessibility, there are people who live in the dense urban areas. That's why they live in the dense urban areas. People with cars have much more flexibility to get to media than people who don't. I think, I'm obviously very much in support of extended hours if we can make them happen. I think that's a very well made point. People do work. We do want them to be able to do this on their commute home or, I know there are a lot of people who will be able to access. I work at Upper Darby Township. I'm a municipal employee of Upper Darby Township. I helped design the One Center, which is the site that this will be. This is exactly what the township had in mind, was to make services as accessible as possible to the most people. My office looks directly over the entrance and our drop box, by the way. And I see people coming in and out of that space all day long accessing municipal services. So there are a lot of people who will be able to access this from 8 to 4:30, and I do hope we make it more convenient for those who can't. In terms of watchers and oversight, these are all public spaces. There's nothing to prevent, there's no law that can prevent someone from coming into the Upper Darby Township One Center, sitting at one of our tables, enjoying the space as it is designed for, and, observing from a respectful distance the operation of the Voter Service Center. You don't even need a watch certificate to do that. You can simply walk into this county courthouse and stand at a respectful distance from the service desk and watch people engage the voter services there. And in terms of this being somehow, a different thing where we're having these satellite polling places and they're somehow insidious, like we're operating a polling place. You're issuing a ballot and people are dropping it in a drop box. The only thing that's being cut out here is the middleman of the United States Postal Service, which, as many people know, sometimes they get it really great and sometimes they send you your ballot very late. So I appreciate that this is a service that will resolve people's anxieties about mail-in voting, which is an important tool in our arsenal. So I do appreciate that not everyone thinks this is a good use of resources, and I do appreciate this could be a burden on our staff, and I'm very conscious of that. I want to make sure that, we are caring for the psychological and physical well-being of our employees, not just as a value in and of itself, but also for the fact that when a voter comes into our voter service center, we want them to face one of our employees who's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and patient and willing to help, not, I'm at my job and I'm exhausted, right? So we do want to do this in a way that is sustainable, both in terms of our financial and our human resources. So I trust that Jim will, in fact, I know that Jim will put a lot of emphasis on that, and I respect and appreciate that. So I'm thrilled that we have this before us, and I, like many of the advocates in the room who we've heard overwhelming response from, I do hope that we will see extended hours, evening hours that will make this as accessible as possible for the most people. And like Representative Boyd said, if we could make permanent locations spread throughout the county in some distant future where we have nothing but resources and access to good buildings, I would support that as well. So voting is changing. It's changing everywhere in the country. It has changed many times throughout, the history of this country. We don't gather in the public square and raise our hands like we used to. I do think that these kinds of tools to make voting accessible to more people will continue to expand, and I will continue to support them to the extent that they're reasonable and to the extent that the law will allow. So.
And I just want to say one thing, because the why is important. Why is this? This isn't a Democrat or a Republican issue in my view. This is how can we help voters with some very specific things, which Mr. Allen has outlined. But for me, the why, I don't know how many of you have had this happen already, but everybody is so anxious about this election. And I'm getting calls, I'm getting texts, and I got to be careful because of my role here. But I have people saying, my kid does, I can't believe this. Children, not children, because they're adults, they can vote, don't know how to fill out bubble tests anymore like the way we used to. So they put check marks in the bubble, despite this clear directions on the ballot. So I've gotten that, well, is that going to be accepted? I had, as I mentioned earlier, someone come to me and say, I really want to vote in person in this election. I love mail-in balloting, but I've changed my mind on this one. I want to vote in person. What do I do? And these are things that, if you've ever worked in the polls, and probably the people left in this room, many of you have, in the polls, not working outside, which is a different role, but in the polls, the judge of election and the minority inspector's job when someone wants to vote provisionally or surrender a mail-in ballot it takes some time. It just does for them to do that right. And we know, because we've had many hearings on it, to get all the signatures right. I mean, there's so many signatures that the law has and the courts have decided that are required. And it's, if we can create opportunities to facilitate for the judges, the opportunity for other voters who have these issues to resolve them before the election, which is why the last 2 weeks makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense right now when some people are calling me and saying, I think I might have voted wrong. I checked the box, my kid checked the box instead of a circle. But to really resolve, I messed up on my mail-in ballot, or I want to, all those things before the election, I'm all for it. But Mr. Allen, I think a lot has been said, and I definitely think that if you want to speak on it, you should certainly be given the opportunity to speak further.
So first off, I just want to make it, make it abundantly clear that my approach tends to be cautious. We just finished, our printers, I should say, just finished printing the election day ballots. And starting with my first election here ahead of May of 2021, and every election since then, I have made sure that we have a ballot scanner and an employee up at the printing plant, so that if we get a deck of ballots for the logic and accuracy process from the printers, and that's going to be printed separately and apart from the job where they actually print the election day ballots that are going to be used, we're on site with a worker and testing 3 ballots or more from every single precinct to make absolutely certain, or as close to certain as we can be, that when those shrink wrap packs of 50 ballots are opened in the precinct on election day, that our voters are going to get ballots that are going to scan. And we've been successful at that. We don't have problems that you've seen in other jurisdictions. And from what the printer says, we're the only jurisdiction that takes this precaution, and they wish others did so. We're not, to answer your questions, I thought that I had mentioned the 3 locations at a previous meeting. I thought I had mentioned the possibility of Upper Darby, Chester Heights, and Chester City. So if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I could swear that I did mention those were the 3 that I was looking at. But again, I wanted to make sure that we had the staffing and that we had the functional equivalent or capacity to make these things work. So just as we take a lot of care for our election day voters, for example, I've been saying to every one of my managers and anyone in the public, anybody who's approached me, all three of you board members individually for more than a year now, that based on the data I saw from 2022, November of 2022, and how many of those voters voted by mail in 2020, but chose to vote in person in 2022, that we are going to brace for more voting in person, even as was mentioned earlier in this meeting by people who I think may have applied for a mail or absentee ballot, didn't get it, and maybe they're doing that as a safety plan or something. But I think they're going to go to the polling places on election day. And to that end, we've beefed up as much as we can many more of the temporary, the threefold voting booths that you can set up on tables so that you can have more stations. It's why over the last year and a half, we introduced the electronic poll books to make sure that we're going to be able to check in voters more quickly. So that's the approach I took with whether or not we can and need voter service centers. I think this is relative to what we're seeing in other counties that have had theirs open for 2 weeks. I think this is a much more scaled back version. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be temporary workers only. We're going to have a full-time person at each and every site. And we've got backups in case someone has to call in sick or their husband has to go to the hospital or whatever the case may be. As far as authorized representatives, technically, no, they're not specifically allowed to be in the election offices. However, as was mentioned by one of the board members, at these public sites, there can be someone in the room as long as they're not interfering with the work of the voter of providing their personal identifying information to the person who's handling and processing the application. So I hope that answers all the questions. We did not give out any information. The recitation of the exact addresses, other than the municipalities at a previous meeting. This morning was the first time I mentioned what sites, precisely what sites. And part of that was I had to contact 53 West Baltimore Pike, which we use as a polling place to make sure that we could get a lease, which I have not signed because I want to wait to see if this board is going to approve it. So the cost of that site is the only one where we anticipate rent. And that's, I want to say about $2,300 for the 2 weeks.
We're paying for where? $2,300 to?
For the owners of 53 West Baltimore Pike, which is a private office building, which we also use as a polling place on election day.
I mean, if the locations of these sites weren't known or revealed till today, how can we have a state representative that walks in and knows the locations? How can we have the state League of Women Voters?
I mentioned them before anybody spoke.
Professional wing of the Democratic Party.
Hold on.
You know, that are, you know the location. How does it that all the people that marched up here today apparently had more information? And I would challenge anywhere to see where was it? Where was it discussed? Where was it talked about that we would have what locations these things were going to be?
Right before the public comment section.
Let him finish, and Mr. Allen, I'll give you
Today,
response.
Yes.
right before the public comment section today. And there we have it. And we announced we've had workers being trained to do this. How would we have workers being trained to do this if the board didn't discuss it and approve it?
I thought that we did discuss in a meeting, please check me because I'm middle-aged, specifically, Mr. Allen exploring the possibilities of opening these centers. And I thought that we talked about spreading locations out throughout the county, and Upper Darby has always been, it was an original location for one of the service centers, as I remember it. I don't know if we're using the exact same site, but I certainly understood that Upper Darby would be a likely, it's not the same site, but it would likely be one of those locations. But I thought we authorized him more informally. I don't know that if we did it by vote or not. I can't remember, but I thought we had a meeting where we specifically discussed him coming to present his findings and whether he could make a recommendation. And frankly, I wasn't sure that he would. I didn't have secret information about that. I was just pleased to get the word that he thought that he could do it safely and fairly. And that's where we are today. But if my memory's wrong, we can all check the public record. Any other comments?
I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as previously stated, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, one opposed. That motion passes 2-1. Thank you. Mr. Allen, we are going to also talk about the preparations for the November 2024 election. And I think there's a gentleman here who's been very patient, who did have some concerns about safety to the extent that may have already been in what you were going to speak to, but to the extent you could add some of the ideas, some of the information about what we are doing, because poll worker safety is so important to us. I would appreciate it.
We have added components to our training program, not just this election, but ahead of the primary election, where we discuss de-escalation. Our standard advice applies across the board for whatever the safety issue may be. If it appears that anyone is in harm's way, whether it's a flood or, electrical or a fire or some kind of threat or something else, the process is the same to get everybody to safety and call 911. There's a fine line that we have to walk under the election code between, we have to try to engage law enforcement as much as possible to be ready to respond to any emergencies. But under the election code, we're not allowed to have them stationed, inside or immediately outside the polling place. So we're doing our best to walk that tightrope. I can tell you over the last 2 weeks, I've had conversations with the district attorney's office, as well as the sheriff. And there's going to be outreach to make sure that that we're all on the same page, all the municipalities with law enforcement, as far as what our expectations are. We've been trying to put together, and I think I've got the date nailed down. We'll be asking constables to attend a training session that will be paid if they attend the training. However, there aren't constables available to cover all 428 precincts. There aren't constables that even exist in all municipalities. And to the degree that some municipalities have constables, not all of them, even though they're legally obligated to serve on election day, not all of them do. So we're going to try to make those rules clear. So we've laid the groundwork with preliminary talks with emergency services, the sheriff's department, the DA's office, the park police, what have you. We're having talks about primarily about election day. But again, I want to emphasize that we have to walk a fine line under the election code. So that's where we are.
Can I add to that?
We're also working with CISA, lastly, to put together a class that would be recorded, because we can only accommodate so many individuals in this room, about de-escalation methods, about identifying someone who's kind of pacing menacingly off to the side, and to how to approach them with open body language, and how to try to find out what their solution is going to be, and to bring down the temperature anytime there are confrontations.
You say who CISA is, just so that everybody knows.
It's a division of Homeland Security, and they oversee internet and cybersecurity, and as well as advising election authorities across the country about possible threats. So they work in tandem with all the other Homeland Security divisions.
The only thing I want to add to that, I mean, I participate in some of these conversations with the district attorney, and then where you had many directors, including the director of emergency services, on a call, because we're trying to make sure that law enforcement knows the right line to walk, and that whether they be the police or the constables who there'll be a specific training for, because they're the first call. The park police chief was there. Others were there. It's a really tough line, because I think it was already raised in reaction to some of the Darby issues of the concern that law enforcement not be intimidating voters, but that we also need them if a crime is afoot. The one thing I can say, I will never discourage anybody from calling 911. They're the first responders in all circumstances. But to the extent that there may be people who want to call 911 about electioneering, signs too close to the poll place, and this happens. 911 has the obligation to send units out to that. I really encourage people who are engaged, as you all are, to call 911 that when they believe that a crime is possibly occurring or likely to occur. That's the best use of those resources. I also understand, in addition to the poll worker training and the law enforcement training, I do believe, to your question about does the public know, because your question was really, does the public know what's happening, that this has happened before, and I believe they're going to do it again, although I don't know if it's been scheduled, a press conference that engages that all the parties really that will be invited that we've talked about in terms of both law enforcement and the Election Bureau, to get out the message to the public about the fact that we are trying to make sure that this is a safe and fair election. And I would guess that during that conference, there might be tips like Mr. Allen talked about, of just be concerned and what you should do if you have a concern that's been raised. So if that hasn't, I don't know, Mr. Allen, if you know whether that's been scheduled, but I know it was talked about by the district attorney's office. And I think we do need to get that type of message out to the public. And I think it was effective last time. It also has hopefully a deterrent effect, because if you're going to disrupt our elections, we will do everything to take action against you. And we have made referrals. Sometimes we've made referrals where we might be skeptical, but of whether or not a crime actually occurred. Others where we're less skeptical, unfortunately, but we will refer things to law enforcement whenever they indicate that they might have been a violation of the law with regard to allowing people to have exercise their right to vote. So, Mr. Parks, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one data point, which is the discussions about election security for the 2024 general election cycle began at least as early as February, because I attended a meeting of many of the stakeholders you just described in February, including emergency services and the DA's office and representatives from who are familiar with Homeland Security protocols and that sort of thing. So this is something that's not cobbled together at the last minute. This has been an ongoing effort, and that doesn't even account for the fact that we have already developed and in place very detailed emergency action plans that, for example, came in handy when we had a bomb threat in another past election cycle, and we actually had an emergency action plan that our director of elections, Mr. Allen, had thoughtfully prepared well in advance that we could just refer to right then and there and know what the game plan that was drafted in the cool, calm setting when an emergency wasn't unfolding as a playbook. So
And it worked.
And
we were up and running within an hour and had the courts extend the voter the right to vote for that precinct specifically for an hour. It was amazing.
So there's an awful lot that does go on behind the scenes, and I certainly am sympathetic from my standpoint as solicitor of the board to the public being read into this information. But at the same time, I'm also aware that despite, for example, the fact that these meetings are public and that the agendas are public and all of this information is available, many people, don't choose to avail themselves of it. But it's out there. And I think things like a press conference can help highlight it.
Right. And who should you call if you find somebody electioneering inappropriately? I would say you can call us.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I don't want to say don't.
You're right. I mean, let your local judge of elections at that precinct know, and they will stop it, or they will contact us, or if for some reason they're not cooperating with that, you can contact the Board of Elections on that day, and we have staff available to evaluate those types of complaints and determine if action's appropriate and to take action if it's deemed that action is appropriate.
Yeah, which brings to mind the other fine line that we have to walk, and that is needlessly sowing fear about this upcoming election. I believe that both of the major parties have a strong interest in making sure that Election Day is not disrupted at any polling place, and that that there is respect for this exercise of exercising our First Amendment right to vote and or run for office, which are both extensions of the First Amendment. And again, I want our people to be prepared. I don't want our voters or our poll workers to be terrified of Election Day. I think, to the earlier point, don't call 911 if there's someone electioneering too close to the door or smoking on a playground or whatever. I mean, you try to deal with that. Or call us at 610-891-VOTE, where we'll have solicitors on hand to provide legal advice as far as people who are campaigning too close to the door or perhaps disrupting the polling place. I want to stress that balancing act as well.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Allen, on your report? I know we've talked a long time, but is there any other points you want to make today?
Just that logic and accuracy testing of all the equipment has been completed. The printers have completed printing the Election Day ballots that are going to arrive today. We've been posting periodic updates starting this week for the first time on the website of how many mail and absentee ballots have been mailed and how many have been received, as well as how many arrived through the U.S. mail versus the drop boxes. Currently, we only have the one drop box here at the Government Center and Media, and then come the 14th, the other 36 drop boxes in the community will open. Of the first batches of returned mail and absentee ballot envelopes, about 1% came back with notice and cure issues. As of Wednesday, we had 74 in that category. It's probably a lot more than that now, but about a quarter of those were not signed. About a quarter of those did not have the secrecy envelope, and roughly half had date issues. They either did not date it or they put in an incorrect date, such as August 1 or some date that was too early or after the election to be considered a correct date under the court rulings that we've had.
Where can somebody look it up?
In all these cases, these envelopes are logged into the Shore system as having a legal fatal flaw. And we notify the voters under the process that was reviewed by this board in June and passed unanimously. And we send out replacements with a letter explaining that their original return envelope prevents it from being opened or counted, and that this is their second shot. They can then take that replacement envelope and ballot into the polling place just as they would if they still had their first envelope and ballot, which are canceled in the Shore system. The first one is. The Voter Service Center and Media, as I mentioned before, opened on October 1. We've served 430 voters who applied for ballots, and slightly more than that if you include the individuals who came in to say, I need a replacement secrecy envelope. I tore mine in half, or whatever their issue was. So I want to emphasize to the public that we have some people who arrive at our voter service centers, and there's been by several civic groups and political groups on both sides of the aisle that have wrongly made references to early voting starting. And there is no early voting where you're actually casting a ballot into a scanner before Election Day in Pennsylvania. They have that in Ohio. They have that in a number of other states, but we don't have early voting. So the only thing that they were referring to is the ability to apply for and receive your vote by mail or absentee ballot. There are no scanners that we have at any of at this early voting site, or that we, or now they've got me saying it, at this voter service center. or nor will we have any ballot scanners at any other voter service center. There'll be, if we open as planned in Upper Darby Township, there'll be a drop box outside of that location that's always been there. There will not be one at Chester City Hall, but there is one at Crozier Library in Chester. There is not one at the Chester Heights location, but there are drop boxes in nearby Edgemont, Thornbury, and Concord. So these aren't early voting sites. They're places where you apply for an absentee or a mail-in ballot.
Thank you. Mr. McBlain, any other comments or questions?
Well, on the report, no.
Okay, but there will be comments. Okay. Mr. Alberts, any questions or comments on the report?
Just one comment on the notion of constables being required to serve an election day. I'm one of those people. I spend too much time reading state laws, and one of the
You might want to say you're not an attorney too. So.
I'm not an attorney. I'm very proud. I'm the only member of this board who's not an attorney. But one thing that people should be aware of is that it's a call to render assistance to maintain the peace or to resolve an issue at a polling place issued by a judge of elections, I believe it's an inspector of elections, or one of the three members of this board. And that a constable who fails to or refuses to respond to such a call is actually guilty of a third-degree misdemeanor. That's something that any constables who are watching this, I'd like to remind you that this is the main duty. That's why we elect constables. All the other stuff they do for the magisterial district courts is a nice way for them to make money on the side. But the reason why we elect you is to serve the voters on election day, to maintain the peace and security of our polling places. So,
Mr. Parks, any comments from you?
Not from me, but thank you for highlighting that, Scott.
We have no campaign finance waivers. The next meeting date will be October 22nd, 2024, but before, if it's needed. But Mr. McBlain, did you want to make a general comment before we conclude?
Yeah, General, I expressed my disappointment at the action that was taken here today. Again, I view it as, like I said, I thought I could serve on this board as long as I believe that we were making sure the elections were both secure and fair. I think the board has put their finger on the scale. So I don't think that that fairness aspect is there anymore. Therefore, as much as I'm tempted to do it as of effective immediately, I tender my resignation as of November 30th, 2024, so that I'll complete my duties during this election and the certification process. But then I hereby resign from the board after that date.
I'm very sorry to hear it. I think you serve the board with great distinction. I think there's very few in the county or in the Commonwealth who have a better knowledge of election law. And I think that your viewpoint has always been well served on this board. But I appreciate that you're continuing your duties then through the election, because we need you. You have a really good perspective on elections. So are you?
Well, I will be disappointed to see you go, John. I think you've served honorably and well on this board. I'm sorry you feel that way. And I can't imagine that we'll get someone who is your superior as a replacement. So I appreciate your service and respect your decision, although it disappoints me. And I wish you wouldn't, but
right, me too.
It's your prerogative, of course.
Thank you.
Is there any other?
Having talked with you since before you arrived, and then steadily since then, we've shared a lot of back and forth about different concepts, and I'd say that 98% of the time we've been in general agreement. It saddens me to hear you talk about leaving the board. I would go a step further and hope and pray that you reconsider. I value your input at all points, and I appreciate the candor you've had with me on the rare occasions where we've disagreed. So thank you either way.
Thank you. All right, with that, then Mr. McBlain, one of the things we have a question about is whether we should move to adjourn, and and your view that we should move, or at least that's what you do when you are running the meeting. So I'm gonna, is there a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Miss you. Sorry that this is the issue that made you feel that way.
Very much for you.